The Kareth did not make casual promises. In their culture, an oath was a chain binding the heart and the soul. Once sworn, it could only be broken at the price of exile or death. And Vylara Kareth had sworn the most personal oath of all. She would never again set foot among humans. She had her reasons. The last time she'd crossed paths with the Terran Alliance, her unit had been stationed on a frontier outpost during the Korthic border wars. A small human contingent had been assigned there. Cooperative defense, they'd called it. She'd found them reckless, arrogant, too willing to throw themselves into fire for causes they barely understood. And then came the incident. She still saw it in her mind sometimes. The blinding plasma barrage, the heat, the deafening alarms. She had been pinned down with her squad when a human soldier named Captain Rourke had come charging through, hauling her out by the arm while returning fire one-handed. He had saved her life, but at the cost of his own. She had hated him for it. Hated his people for the casual way they embraced death if it meant victory. It had felt like mockery of her culture's belief in measured survival. So when she was finally discharged from military service, she had sworn it aloud in the Temple of Oaths. No human shall walk beside me again. I will not speak with them. I will not fight with them. I will not care for them. For 10 long years, Vylara kept that vow. The unexpected mission. The trouble with oaths is that the galaxy has no respect for them. Vylara had built a quiet life on Kest Prime, working as a salvage broker. She kept to her kind, traded with other Kareth and a few neutral species. But one humid evening, as she sorted through ship parts in her small docking bay, the planetary security chief arrived in person. Vylara Kareth, the chief said. We have an urgent request. A distress signal from the outer dust belt. It's a transport ship. Crucial diplomatic cargo. Vylara frowned. Why me? There are dozens of licensed retrieval teams closer. The chief hesitated. Because the nearest qualified pilot is you. And because the signal is fading. She almost refused outright until he added, there's a living passenger aboard. If we don't get them within 24 hours, the air will run out. Species? She asked cautiously. He tapped his wrist display. Human. Her breath caught. She turned away instantly. Find someone else. There is no one else in range, the chief said sharply. We've lost 2 ships already in that dust storm. You have the right craft for the job, and you've flown that region before. If you don't go, that passenger dies. Vylara's first instinct was to say let them die. It wasn't her problem. But in the corner of her mind, she saw Rourke's face again, grinning as he shoved her toward safety while his own armor took the hit. And before she knew it, she was sealing her flight suit. The rescue. The dust belt was an ugly place. Swirling mineral storms, electromagnetic pulses from nearby planetoids, and rocks the size of cities tumbling silently past. Vylara's shuttle cut through the haze, sensors struggling to hold a lock on the weak distress beacon. She found the transport wedged between 2 asteroid ridges, its hull scarred by micrometeor impacts. Docking was a nightmare. She had to tether manually. When she finally breached the airlock, the smell of burnt wiring and stale oxygen hit her. She called out in the guttural Terran tongue she hadn't spoken in a decade. Is anyone alive? A voice answered, faint, hoarse. Here. She found him slumped against a bulkhead, a young man, maybe late 20s, wearing a patched Terran flight suit. His helmet visor was cracked, his left arm bound in a crude sling. His dark hair was matted with sweat, but his eyes were alert. You're not human, he rasped. Correct, she said, kneeling to check his vitals. You're injured. Can you walk? He gave a crooked smile. If you help me, yeah. Name's Elias. She almost ignored it. Names were personal. But something in his gaze was disarming, almost stubbornly alive. Getting him back to her shuttle took nearly half an hour of careful maneuvering through the crippled corridors. Twice she thought the whole wreck might collapse around them. When they finally sealed the hatch, he exhaled in relief. Didn't think anyone would come, he murmured. I almost didn't, she admitted. Drifting in the storm. The dust storm worsened on the return trip. With navigation blind, Vylara had to cut engines and drift, waiting for the electromagnetic interference to pass. That left her and the humans sealed in the tiny cabin, the hum of life support the only sound. He was feverish from infection, so she gave him antibiotics from her medkit. As she worked, he studied her. You've dealt with humans before, he said suddenly. Her hands stilled. Why do you think that? Because you keep avoiding looking me in the eyes. That's a soldier's habit, when they've lost someone who looked like you. Her jaw tightened. You are observant for someone half dead. He chuckled weakly. Half dead, still alive. And you saved me. So thanks. Even if you hate us. She didn't answer. But later, as he dozed fitfully, she found herself watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. He was nothing like Rourke, slighter, younger, but the same stubborn refusal to give up seemed etched into him. The break in the vow. By the time they cleared the storm, his condition had worsened. His breathing was shallow, his skin clammy. Vylara could have pushed for a straight jump to Kest Prime, but the med bays there were too far. She altered course to a remote outpost, one she knew had emergency medical units. It cost her hours of travel and no small risk to her own ship's energy reserves. When she helped him onto the outpost gurney, he gripped her hand suddenly. Why are you helping me this much? The oath was like a stone in her chest. She could have told him nothing. But the truth slipped out, quiet as the outpost's air recyclers. Because once a human saved me. And I hated him for it. I don't want to hate anymore. His eyes softened before the medics wheeled him away. Rebuilding. Elias recovered slowly. She stayed longer than she meant to. Ostensibly to oversee repairs on her shuttle, but in reality, she found herself checking on him every day. He asked her questions about Kareth culture, about the salvage trade, about her favorite star systems. At first she answered curtly. But over time the answers grew longer. And then came the night when they sat on the outpost's observation deck, watching the Dust Belt storms from a safe distance. He told her about his family on Mars, his love of music, and how he had been transporting artifacts to foster peace talks between colonies. You risked all that for strangers, she said. Someone has to, he replied simply. If we all stay away from each other, nothing changes. She didn't realize until later that she'd been smiling at him, ending the choice. When his clearance came to travel again, he asked her, "Where will you go next?" "I have a salvage contract in the Tarthiz cluster," she said. "It's dangerous work. You should return to your people." He looked at her for a long moment. "I will. But, will I see you again?" Her first instinct was to say no. The oath still lingered, heavy with 10 years of distance. But she thought about the long hours in the cabin, the quiet talks on the observation deck, the way his stubborn warmth had chipped at the ice she'd carried since Rourke's death.